So why tap into the global marketplace? First off, it can provide another revenue stream for your company. Now, if your company primarily targets overseas clients, obviously it's more of your cake than the icing. But for most people, your primary market is your local market. So looking overseas will provide an icing on the cake for you, so to speak. That can be anywhere from 5, 10%, maybe even more, depending on your industry or the service that you're providing. Secondly, from my own personal experience, I found that it can be extremely fun and rewarding. I personally love travel, so going to other countries and finding out what I can do for them and what services and products I can provide to them to either increase their productivity, their training, whatever it is, it becomes very rewarding for me and also humbling. And vice versa. When I go to these countries, I'm always looking for opportunities for them to come into Australia that they might not have thought about before. So it becomes a two-way street, a win-win situation for both parties. The third thing, sometimes there is funding available to support the export endeavors of small business. The Austrade, the Australian Trade Commission, they do have a government program called the Export Market Development Grant, and you can submit that. It's usually annually. Submit how much that you've put to your export endeavors, and you might be able to get some money back from the government. These opportunities are also sometimes available in your local community, your local city council, or your state and your territory. You just have to go to that agency to find out what is available. I know for myself, I've been on a number of trade missions in the ACT, the Australian Capital Territory, and they did help subsidize some of our accommodation and travel to that country as part of our market research. And it was usually a joint initiative from the local government as well as Austrade. And without that kind of funding, I would not have been able to go on those trade missions. It is actually a small world after all. 20 years ago, maybe not so much, but today we have smartphone technology, mobile technology, we have Skype, we have social media, you name it, and it's there. So, a phone call to somebody overseas can literally cost nothing today. Going on LinkedIn, which I use a fair bit, I find potential partners and people to give me insight to a particular country on what the market is. So we really don't have much of an excuse to not go internationally. Expanding internet users. This is just increasing at such a rapid rate, it's quite overwhelming. So my own personal belief is that every business should be online. We have so much information to sell, and we can also sell products and also services. So there's different ways of going about that as well, but just to know that the world is becoming smaller, as I said before, and the number of people using the internet is increasing at quite a rapid rate. So let's look at some statistics on this. In 2012, in the second quarter, statistics were generated to show that the number of users, internet users in the world, Asia was on top, then followed by Europe, North America, Latin America, Africa, Middle East, and Oceania. So obviously, just by sheer numbers, it's not that surprising that Asia would have the most number of people on the net or the internet users. Now, what's defined as an internet user? These definitions vary depending on what organization that you're looking at or speaking with. Some say it's someone aged 2 plus or 2 over who went online in the past 30 days. I'm sure that the number of 2-year-olds going online would be somewhat small, but in today's world and the rapid pace of learning by the youngsters today, one never knows. The most important thing is that these users do have available access and they do have a basic knowledge of the net. Now here's what's different, and this is I would say the most important piece of research information is the penetration rates. Now the best way of describing penetration rates is when we look at the overall population, the percentage of that population who are actually using the internet. That is the percentage or the penetration rates. So for example here, when we look at Asia is very high of internet users, but they're second to last of the penetration rates, where North America comes in third, but they're number one. So I'll show you another site that explains it a little bit better. if we look here, all right, so here's Asia. The population estimate in 2012 was about 3.9 billion people. The internet users, latest data, as of would be of June 30th, 2012, about 1.1 billion. All right, so when we look at the penetration rate, which is the percentage population, in essence in Asia, it's only 27.5% of that population are using the net. Okay, so it's that penetration. Now there is a fair bit of growth, all right? If we look at Africa, all right, lowest penetration rate, but their growth rate is quite high. So this is another way of interpreting the data of going, well, what are the opportunities in the future? Because the growth rate in some of these developing countries, Africa, Middle East, Latin America, is growing at a rapid rate. So depending on what your product or service is, could provide another opportunity for you in exporting in the future. Let's look at another group of statistics for penetration rate, which I've found quite interesting. The top 50 countries with the highest internet penetration rate is Iceland. So their penetration rate is almost 98%, right? Country literacy, 99%. Internet users, 304,000 out of a population of 311,000. So that almost that entire country is on the internet. And then we can see that it's Norway, Sweden, Falkland Islands. If we go down, Australia is number 7, so that's pretty good. And then if we look at, if we go further down, we have the UK at number 14, and Canada is at number 19, and the United States is all the way down at number 27. It's not down at the bottom, but you can see we might have thought that United States was up quite high, but when we look at these other countries from regards to a penetration rate, if you have an internet business, you might look at those countries that have a higher penetration rate. So when we look at the statistics of why tapping in the global marketplace, hopefully this gives you a better understanding, especially if you do have an internet-based business, of how you can use this data to determine where your markets are.